Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Ugandan MP Bobi Wine appears unsteady on his feet in court as weapons charges against him are dropped, but fresh capital charges of treason are brought against him instead. International calls for his freedom continue to grow. Also, the lives of the tens of thousands of Anglophone Cameroonian refugees in Nigeria are uncertain and still filled with danger. Many of those who fled a brutal crackdown on a bid for succession back home still struggle to find enough shelter or food. Our correspondents take a closer look. And we'll be heading to Benin, where the use of non-biodegradable plastic bags has been banned since July. The law can only go so far, so we meet one campaigner putting in the legwork to make sure people pack in the use of plastic. But first, Ugandan MP Kyagulanyi Ssentamu was charged with treason on Thursday, just minutes after weapons charges against him were dropped. The young opposition politician, who's also known as Bobi Wine, is an influential critic of President Yoweri Museveni. His arrest and that of 4 other MPs earlier this month sparked days of protests and international calls for Ssentamu's release. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
It was a long day for Bobi Wine. First, a military court in the town of Gulu withdrew charges against the lawmaker for illegally possessing weapons. But he was then told he was to face the more serious charge of treason in a civilian court. There he was told that he had to remain in custody until August the 30th, but that he would be allowed access to private medical care. His lawyers said he was beaten and tortured during his arrest, charges denied by the military. The 36-year-old former singer emerged from the courtroom in a defiant mood. In the capital, Kampala, his supporters had followed the news closely.
Uganda will be so dangerous if they don't release that man, because as I told you, Bobi Wine is our future.
Bobi Wine and 4 other members of parliament were arrested for their alleged role in an incident in which President Museveni's motorcade was pelted with stones. The star-turned-lawmaker is hugely popular with the youth, and his songs often slammed Museveni, who's been in power for more than 3 decades. Wine supporters gathered in cities across the world like London, Tokyo and here in Nairobi to call for his release.
Bobi Wine is one person who represents millions of Ugandans and millions of East Africans and millions of Africans who are tired of bad leadership, who are tired of corruption, who are tired of dictatorship. And we're here to voice that frustration.
100 politicians and artists like Angelique Kidjo and Damon Albarn have also signed an open letter condemning his treatment. The 74-year-old Museveni had probably not expected that there would be such an international outcry after the arrest of Bobi Wine last week.
Well, for a closer look at this, we're joined by Roseburg Kagame. She's a blogger and opposition activist and speaks to us from Kampala. Roseburg, thanks for speaking to us. Now, why is Bobi Wine such a threat to President Yoweri Museveni? What does he represent?
I think when you look at Bobi Wine, you have to see what has been happening in the country the last 15 years, that the fact that we have a country with 78% of the people below the age of 35, many of them opposed to the president, and most of them appealing, finding Bobi Wine appealing because he happens to represent their story. For the first time, you have a younger person in our history that young people can relate to. But also, he's quite a very clever politician. He uses music. His background is music, and he uses it even when he's been elected a parliamentarian. He still uses his music to put his point across, to criticize the regime and put the voice of the youth forward.
Roseburg, what were, as far as you're aware, Ugandans' reactions to seeing Bobi Wine in court on Thursday? President Museveni had insisted he hadn't been mistreated, but he clearly needed help to walk. What was your response to that?
We all knew that We all knew it was lies, but looking at him, unable to walk, a lot of people were in tears, just like the MP was in tears, really, to see all the support. But nonetheless, people showed up to show him support. But a lot of Ugandans are quite disappointed. But this is not the first time they've seen somebody tortured, a high-profile person tortured. We have an opposition leader who's been tortured several times. He's been put on charges of rape and treason. So we see this is very systematic with the regime's behavior. Whenever a very good candidate comes up, the people increasingly moving away from Museveni's support. So this is not the first time, but really it's the first time we are seeing such huge numbers of youth willing to stick it out and say we are here and we want to be heard and we want a free and fair election and we want an end to trumped up charges against politicians whose crime is just simply being opposed to President Museveni.
So speaking about other politicians there, 3 other MPs were arrested alongside Bobi Wine. They're also facing the same treason charges. Are you equally concerned about all of them?
Definitely, if you see online, Free Bobi Wine is trending, but we also have Free Arua 33. Along with the MPs, actually 4 MPs, one is hospitalized, he's hanging on to his life. He was badly brutalized. He's in Kampala, but the others are together with Bobi Wine right now in Gulu, which is about 300 kilometers from the capital. But along with the MP, there are other 30 people, ordinary people who are with the politicians. So people are continuing to press for their release. And we hope that next week we'll see something happening. But definitely Bobi Wine being arraigned before the military court was one of those things that riled Ugandans once again, that President Museveni is using the military to threaten people who are civilians and who have no job being arraigned in a military court.
Thanks very much. Roseburg Kagame there for us. Now, South Africans haven't taken too kindly to Donald Trump's contribution to the debate around South Africa's land reform program. The US president tweeted that he wanted his Secretary of State to look into farm seizures and the large-scale killing of farmers in South Africa. However, fact-checkers say that the demographic, which is largely white, does not face any more risk of being murdered than the average South African. The government is planning on changing the constitution to allow land expropriation without compensation. Pretorius said that Trump's tweet is divisive and summoned US officials on Thursday to protest the comments. Over 40,000 Anglophone Cameroonians have fled into Nigeria to escape a brutal crackdown on an armed separatist movement. Since 2016, the crisis has escalated from original calls just for more English to be used in schools in the Francophone majority country. In an unfamiliar country with few resources, many refugees struggle to find shelter, water and food. Life is uncertain. Our correspondent's report.
The grieving of a family and a community faced with the unbearable image of a mother and her 2 children buried in one coffin. There was not enough money to buy 3. Here in Nigeria, around 5,000 English-speaking Cameroonian refugees took part in the funeral of 8 members of the same family. They are believed to have died of carbon dioxide poisoning. Barnabas's wife is one of the victims. He tells us that most had just arrived in the area of Ikom from Cameroon after fleeing fighting in their villages.
It was because of this problem of Cameroon that most of them, they joined us here. They were just living here with me, the entire family. I'm so sorry that God who brought them to this world actually returned them back.
Not far away, on the other side of the border, the victims' home village is now controlled by Cameroonian soldiers. 8 months ago, Dadi was secessionist stronghold. Today, most locals are gone. The army suspected many of being accomplices of armed separatists.
The village is deserted because the inhabitants are accomplices. If they were innocent, they could have given us information about the secessionist fighters. Now they are gone. We even want them to come back, but they don't want to.
But fighting between the military and separatists continues, and it is too dangerous for refugees in Nigeria to return. 80% of those living in camps like these are women and children. The Aya Foundation is one of the few Cameroonian NGOs offering aid to traumatized people.
The first and second visits were not easy. The gun trauma, the burning of the house is a trauma. That trauma was so fresh in them. You could not even see a gleam of smile. But now you can see around, the children are really smiling and they are happy.
The Anglophone crisis continues to escalate in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. Every day, more people arrive in Nigeria having fled violent turmoil. For the most part, their futures remain precarious.
That report by Indira Ayuk. Now, most plastic bags have been banned in Benin since July, but the law can only go so far. We meet one campaigner now who's putting in the legwork to make sure that people understand why it is important to pack in the plastic. Emmanuel Soji reports.
This morning, as the sun rose over Cotonou, the capital of Benin, Sandra Dosso managed to gather almost 300 people in her war against the plastic bag, 5 times as many as just a few months ago.
Our city councils have to take care of the cleanliness of the cities, but it's also down to us as citizens to take responsibility and admit that if Cotonou is dirty, it's also our fault.
I admire what she's doing. It's the first time I've taken part in eco running. It makes us even more aware. It's one thing to know about the issue and quite another to go out onto the streets and pick up piles of plastic.
After an hour and a half of picking, they've collected over 800 kilos of waste plastic.
If there'd been more of us, we would have picked even more. Our towns are infested with plastic bags.
After months of effort, Sandra Dosso and her team of volunteers have managed to persuade groups of people about the dangers of plastic waste. Their priority is the areas where the buildup of waste plastics is most severe, such as this border area with Nigeria. Here there is so much waste, it's blocking water from draining away.
Some have said that we should give up. We started 10 months ago. We do what we can, but we can't get through to that many people as we don't have the means. We're not the state, but we need state help, and it's the state's responsibility.
Funding is tight, so the activist seeks the help of those most enthusiastic about saving the planet, children. Sandra believes there can be no real change without involving the next generation.
Bravo! Okay? Qu'est-ce que toi tu peux expliquer à papa?
We cannot give up on this generation. We've got to teach them bit by bit that bags are a threat to their health.
In the local language, Aloe means cursed, and Sandra would love her country to be rid of the scourge of plastic, just like Rwanda, where she lived for 10 years, and whose capital, Kigali, is said to be the cleanest in Africa.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.